Hello, 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 my beautiful soul family. I just wanted to come on because, wow, over the past couple of days, I've had some really great revelations and deep insights into just deeper layers of getting to know my family, getting to know my family's history, getting to know my grandfather's entrepreneurial journey. So yesterday was my brother's birthday, and we went and celebrated his 33rd turn around the sun, and that was really awesome. And for some reason, he felt called to bring Grandpa's books. My grandfather has written like a bunch of short stories and books, and he never had them published, but he's printed them out and given them to us and to his friends and things like that. And last night, well, first of all, I get in the car and my brother plops down the bag, and the first book that's on the very, very top is Saint Mary Magdalene, a whole book just written about her. And I just got full body goosebumps because I've been really feeling her energy coming through lately and the divine feminine presence and just feeling guided by higher energy, by higher beings, by my ancestors, by my guardian angels, um, especially during these times when I keep finding myself reaching out for my grandmother because I see her story of how she came from nothing and built a legacy with my grandfather. And granted, that legacy didn't live, but reading my grandfather's books last night, so at first I was like, this is a pain in the ass. He's giving me all these books. I don't want them. Um, and then I saw the Mary Magdalene thing and I was like, oh my God. And then I got home and it was like how the D.A. Baker Company started and learning my grandfather's process of how he became successful by learning to embody the energy that you want to become. So my grandfather wrote books on dressing for success, dress codes, about how him and my grandmother would travel to Newport, Rhode Island every single weekend and just go walk around the mansions. They couldn't afford to actually go and have an actual tour, but they would go and be a part of the energy, and that brought in the energy, and so they kept putting themselves in these situations. And even though they couldn't afford the fancy restaurants, they would pack a lunch and they would go to these fancy places that embody the energy of abundance and around the Belcourt castles and everywhere. And they would just drive there on their little motorcycle and they'd spend the day there, and then they'd go and they'd have lunch. They'd pack their lunch, and it started there. And my grandfather started by like going around and asking people like, what do you need fixed, and finding solutions for people. And that's how his business started. He started by trying to find what value he could bring to people's lives and then creating that. And he learned these little steps of like the way that you dress literally changes the way that you feel about yourself. That changes the energy that you are like emanating, and then therefore literally you're like changing your personality. I think Dr. Joe Dispenza talks on this a lot about like you change your personality, you change your personal reality, and like how like when you wear different clothing, it can change your personality, changes how you feel about yourself. You feel more confident, more outgoing, you know, and you're able to hold your posture more because you feel like, I'm confident in myself. I'm dressed for success. Like you're already putting that intention out there when you're getting ready for the day. And then my grandfather never gave up. Like people were telling him that he would never succeed, said that he was stupid, said that his business would never work. And because he had the loving presence of my grandmother, he says she was the love of his life, and that if it wasn't for her, the business would have never come to be. And that it was her believing in him that made him able to take that leap of faith. He even was told by the garment factoring company that he worked for that they would double his pay, even though he was union. They would pay him under the table extra cash just to stay, And my grandfather said, no, unless you make me a shareholder, I cannot stay because I'm looking to build a future for my family. Not just, he goes, I have everything that I need now, but what I'm looking for is to build a future. And so he didn't take the man's offer, and he took that leap of faith, and it was almost like the universe was guiding him the whole way because he said he was like collecting all these pieces of machinery in the basement and like by learning how to reconstruct a motorcycle and a Jaguar. Like he learned so much just from hands-on experience. He didn't have a lot of school knowledge, but somehow still created a multi-million dollar legacy to leave behind. Now, the business started to fail and went down when he stopped being able to put his energy into the business. And I really feel this deep call to learn their story, to learn more from him, to absorb his energy, and to like literally replicate what he created and help other people do the same thing. And I'm like thinking about like the book Dress for Success. I'm thinking of all these other books that I've been reading about entrepreneurship and like really learning how to step into that new personality, into that new personal reality and how to embody the frequency before it's yours. And by my grandparents going to Newport, Rhode Island every weekend, even though they couldn't afford to go into the mansions, but just going there and just feeling the energy, embodying the energy of already having it. My grandparents became best friends with Harley Tinney and Donald Tinney, who owned Belcourt Castle. They have been to the Ritz on multiple occasions. I'm not trying to brag. I'm just like, I'm flabbergasted by their story because I'm literally like reading it and watching them go from rags to riches and like watching my grandfather's process through the whole thing. And it's the exact formula that's being taught through all of these other teachers. But it's just wild that like when you really follow your passion, you really follow your excitement, and you follow what lights you the F up, you're guided to have that bigger vision of your life. Like my grandfather started off with like nothing, barely making ends meet and going bankrupt, and then flipped it around. And like I said, if you saw the multi-million dollar house that they live on right now on Lake Winnipesaukee, in Newport, not Newport, in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, you would just be flabbergasted. The house that they live in, the suits of armor that they have, the oriental rugs, just the art, the things that they've collected over the years, the pictures and the people and the places that they've gone and seen and met. And it's all because my grandfather never gave up. He never stopped believing in himself, even when everyone was saying it wouldn't work, even when everyone was saying the odds are against you. He said, no, a will finds a way, and he fucking persevered. And that's my message for the day. Like I'm just like flabbergasted reading his work and like just feeling like wow, so much gratitude because this is the lineage, this is the karmic, this is my family's legacy, and I'm taking what he has given. And even though I'm not taking his business, I'm taking his knowledge and I am going to propel it into something. Like, I just feel this need to write a book. I feel this need to spread the knowledge that I'm reading through my grandfather and just channeling through. And I'm just like, I just, I'm really feeling it. And so I felt the need to come on here and just tell you guys, like, I'll take some pictures. I'll even come on and read some of his work, and so you guys can just. He's a little hilarious man. He's got a great sense of humor, and yeah, he always believed in himself, and he never gave up, and he just kept going, and he kept going, and he kept going, and they came from nothing, renting a base room apartment, barely making ends meet, having bill collectors knocking on the door, threatening my grandfather, That's where they came from, to being able to live a life of luxury where they were able to own a Jaguar, they were able to own a Rolls Royce, they're able to buy their dream property on Lake Winnipesaukee in New Hampshire, for their retirement. They were able to sell their business and create enough money to live off of for the rest of their life and leave some behind for their kids. But more so than the money, they're leaving behind the legacy of what they built and how they built it, the knowledge, the wisdom, the keys and the codes that are needed to help other people rise out of poverty. And that is why I'm coming on and talking about it, because I just felt the need to come on and speak it. How, like my grandfather would say, he could barely afford the fancy clothes, but he bought the fancy clothes because when he wore the fancy clothes, it made him feel like that successful person. And by feeling it, by that feeling state, we anchor it into our reality. It's so freaking wild. And it's like the progression over the years of like my grandfather being a motorcycle, you know, train hopping, hoodlum pretty much to being a successful businessman. Who really built something for himself and his family and had a really, really beautiful life, traveling, meeting people all around the world. And not just like any people, like my grandfather got knighted by the Knights of St. John. Like I said, he was friends with the Tinneys and a bunch of other people that owned castles in Newport, Rhode Island. Like he went from not being able to even afford getting in to get to have these places, to go for a tour, to being able to get remarried to my grandmother at Belcourt Castle on their 50th wedding anniversary. That's the quantum leap that they took by believing in themselves, by taking that leap of faith, and by continuing to trust their highest excitement and not settling for what they're being told is reality, because we create it, and they're perfect examples of it. So I had to come on and share. Hope you guys have a great day.